This week in Washington, Senate Republicans passed an outline for a $1.5 trillion tax cut. It's short on details, but the promise is that the tax cuts will stimulate economic growth. But is that true? Here's David Schechter with Verify.
Verify. Fast facts.
There's been a lot of talk about President Trump's budget, but so far no one has seen it. Still, supporters say Trump tax cuts would be a steroid injection to boost the American economy. Right now, all we've seen is this 9-page plan. The highlights are a lowering of corporate tax, lowering of personal taxes, particularly for the wealthy, and the elimination of inheritance taxes. Would those kinds of tax cuts be a shot in the arm? Economist James Galbraith is a professor at the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas. Have tax cuts been discredited as a way to stimulate growth, or is it a legitimate way to do that?
Process of cutting taxes for the wealthy as a general formula for stimulating growth and getting a higher growth rate has been vastly oversold.
He's saying tax cuts are not a silver bullet for growth. There have been two major tax cuts in recent history. President Ronald Reagan had one in the early 80s after a major recession, and there was an economic recovery that followed, but also the national debt ballooned. Galbraith actually worked as an economist in Congress at that time.
And we expected that it would have a significant effect on stimulating economic recovery, and it did.
On the other hand, there's George W. Bush's tax cuts in the early 2000s. According to the Nonpartisan Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, there is no support for the claim that the tax cuts generated especially robust economic growth.
Were much weaker in their effect, much weaker. And so there's reason to believe that looking at the situation now, it's not remotely similar to the Reagan context, but it's much closer to the Bush context.
So do tax cuts spur economic growth? The answer is kind of unsatisfying, but it depends. Galbraith does say tax cuts are oversold as a driver of growth, and really the answer lies in the details of those cuts, and those are details we just don't have right now. If you've got something you want verified, send me an email.